start with the news around East Africa. From Tanzania, the government of Tanzania informs all travelers planning to visit the country that from June 1st, all plastic carrier bags, regardless of the thickness, will be prohibited from being imported, exported, manufactured, sold, stored, and supplied in Tanzania. Moving on to Kenya. Kenya has sold 210 billion shillings Eurobond, the third in 5 years, despite raising concern over its ability to service its debt burden. The National Treasury Cabinet Secretary Henry Rotich says in a statement dated May 15th that the issuance triggered an overwhelming response from investors, leading to an oversubscription of 4.5 tons. Coming back to Uganda, Dr. Margaret Bukenya, a wife to former Vice President Professor Gilbert Bukenya, has filed for divorce. Through her lawyers, Logmark and co-advocates, she accuses Bukenya of adultery. Now, Bukenya and Margaret wedded on September 21st, 1974 at St. Augustine's Chapel in Makerere University. They lived in Mulago and Mebo, where they both worked as physicians. Now, the two have 3 children: Richard Mutawonga Bukenya, 45 years, Georgina Bukenya, 42 years, and Gilbert Roy Bukenya Kamoga, 37 years. Let's close the news around East Africa from Southeast Sudan, where South Sudan's President Salva Kiir on Wednesday warned against planned protests, saying any forceful attempts to seize power in the country would be met by violent resistance. In the past 2 weeks, a new group calling itself the Red Card Movement has been circulating calls online for protest on Thursday with the hashtags Kiir Must Go and South Sudan Uprising, with organizers appealing to the best, mostly in the diaspora. The movement appears to be inspired by street protests in neighboring Sudan, which led to the toppling of veteran President Omar al-Bashir. Let's move on now to the news around the world. We start from Hong Kong, where prominent Hong Kong student leader Joshua Wong was sent back to prison Thursday after he lost an attempt to squash a jail sentence over his leadership of huge democracy protests 5 years ago. Wong, 22 years, became one of the most recognizable faces of the umbrella movement in 2014, which paralyzed key intersections of the financial hub for more than 2 months. Protesters were demanding a greater say in how the city is run, including the right for Hong Kongers to directly elect the city leader. In Philippines, now the Philippines has called its ambassador to Canada. Manila's foreign minister said Thursday in an escalation of a festering diplomatic row over tons of trash dumped in the Southeast Asian nation. Ties have been deteriorating since a Canadian company sent around 100 shipping containers that included rotting rubbish wrongly labeled as recyclables to Philippines ports in 2013 and 2014. In Sri Lanka, troops and police patrolled parts of Sri Lanka on Thursday as international pressure mounted on Colombo to contain anti-Muslim riots that killed 1 man in a backlash against the Easter terror attacks. Military spokesman Sumuthi Atapatu said that there were no incidents of violence in the 24-hour ending Thursday morning, but police and security forces continue to carry out such operations. In Venezuela, representatives of Venezuela's regime and the opposition are holding peace negotiations in Oslo this week. Venezuela has been in political turmoil since Assembly Speaker Juan Guaido declared himself acting president in January in a direct challenge to President Nicolas Maduro's authority. News from India. India's election watchdog says it has forced Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube to take down hundreds of posts including a country's election, but experts say it is just a drop in an ocean of misinformation that has engulfed voters. The ruling Hindu nationalist Bharatiya Janata Party and opposition Congress Party have thrown armies of cyber warriors into a bitter social media war for the 6 weeks of voting that ends on Sunday. We close the news around the world from Sudan, where Sudanese military rulers on Thursday suspended crucial talks with protesters on installing civilian rule, insisting more time was needed to finalize the deal as Khartoum's security situation deteriorated. On Wednesday, army generals and protest leaders were expected to decide on the makeup of a new body to govern Sudan. For 3 years, the enthroned issue is instating civilian rule following the ouster of longtime autocrat Omar al-Bashir last month. That is it for the news around East Africa and around the world.